as well. Our Oren Lieberman is in Lewes, Delaware now with more on conditions there. Oren.
Chris, I just got an update from DelDOT. A couple interesting points to share. First, the Indian River Inlet Bridge, which is probably, if I'm not mistaken, 6, 7, maybe as much as 10 miles south of us, but that bridge crosses the Indian River Inlet. Normally, that inlet is not that wide. It's from about where I'm standing to the bridge, so maybe 40, 50 feet, 60, 70 feet. That inlet now, because the waters have risen so high, is 3 or 4 miles wide, according to DelDOT. That's how much the water has risen on both sides, not only the Atlantic Ocean, but the Indian River Bay. So, some very serious floodwaters there. About 4 miles of Route 1 south of us are flooded out. Now, that's lower-lying areas. That's towards Dewey Beach and even past that down towards Bethany Beach. So some very serious conditions there. Obviously, not only impossible to drive, it's impossible to rescue anybody who is still there at this point because the main north-south artery along the coast, Route 1, is flooded for multiple miles south of us. Now, let's talk about Rehoboth Beach for a second. In fact, we have some video of Rehoboth Beach a short while ago that we can show you. Some of the highest water we had seen was late last night, some of that ocean water reaching the dune. DelDOT says it's receded just the slightest little bit, not as high as it was last night, but of course, high tide is not here yet. It's on its way, it's coming, and the biggest concern was they weren't expecting the water to be that high last night. Could be a lot higher over the next few hours as high tide rolls in right around 8 o'clock, not only here, but also right across the Delaware Bay in Cape May and all up the Jersey Shore. Some very serious conditions there. We saw some of the roads flooding, a few inches of water already, 6, maybe as much as 8 inches of water on some of the lower roads. Not all the roads flooded though yet, but there is a lot of water coming here. And one of the benchmarks we've used and we will use over the course of this hurricane to see how high the water is rising is the water meter right here behind me, the minimum vertical clearance under this bridge. This is the Route 9 business bridge that goes from Lewes and Route 1 out to the Cape May Lewes ferry. It's holding at about 14 feet. It looks like it may have gone up or down maybe just a couple of inches. A lot of that though is the water rising and falling just from the wind. We'll see how high that goes as more of the hurricane reaches this way, more of the rain, more of the wind, so we'll have a pretty good idea of how high the water is rising. And that'll be our benchmark. All the roads here soaking wet. There's obviously no way to avoid that. Driving, very dangerous. We see a few people running around. Obviously not a good idea under any circumstances here. Conditions very bad and deteriorating quickly. We've been dealing with a lot of wind, and the wind is so powerful that the rain is starting to feel a lot like ice pellets in terms of that power and the cold that it hits you with. So some very serious conditions out here, and we'll keep you posted on how those conditions develop over the course of the next few hours. Again, the biggest thing we just learned is the Indian River Inlet Bridge, which is a few miles south of us on Route 1. That inlet, which shouldn't be any wider than 50 or 60 feet, is now 3 or 4 miles wide because of how high the Indian River Bay has risen and how high the ocean has already risen. Of course, it will go higher still. Chris and Susan, back to you guys in the studio, of course, right as the wind kicks up.
All right, Oren, thank you so much. Be careful, stay safe. Oren's there in Lewes, Delaware, and we